Mic 10. Is this one okay, Trish? Mic 10 is Trish. Is it okay? Mic 9. Can you hear me? Mic 9 okay? Mic 8 okay? This one tends to get some feedback. This one also gets feedback. Mic 7 okay? Mic 6. Mic 5. Mic 4. Could you hear me on mic 4? Mic 3. Mic 2. Wireless mic.
Yeah. Good, good, good.
So it's not like we're spending any money. Everybody's trying to find out why we don't do it every year.
Is she in kindergarten?
Sort of.
She is.
That's right.
Because the guy, another guy up here has got a trail camera he keeps out all the time. He's picked up wolves on
Do you
him.
have two girls or?
One
I have
milestone.
one boy and one my son.
Okay. I did this last time. You want some else to do it?
Yes, two girls.
Yeah, John Campy, he's on the JAO board, isn't he? Yeah, I don't know about who he is.
Master of mind games, and like, if we leave the house and it's something that can't be changed, you can't talk about it until we come home.
Okay. Okay, yeah.
Argument, both of us were in tears in the parking lot of the school before we had
Yeah,
a
yeah.
and I'm like, never again, never again.
He was really on the mission? He was one of the guys on the ground?
Let's get started.
He said when you turn down one of the roads, on the rescue mission.
You ready to roll, Baker? Yes. All right.
I may have to leave.
Oh, yeah. We've seen a lot. We've seen a lot of damage. Author's got about 1,800 head of cattle.
Good morning. I'd like to call this meeting to order by asking Mr. Shelton to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Join us. Thank you.
Mr. Shelton, thank you very much. I'd like to remind the board members that we will be streaming live video of today's meeting, and so please speak into the mic. In terms of the approval of minutes, first up is to ask for a motion
If we do not need it, we certainly will not utilize the funding. So my request today is that the Board of Directors approve a change order totaling $6,278,834 to cover the maintenance dredging services required for the remainder of the current year for a total amount of $11,102,084. This $6.2 million is comprised of the plus the $570,000 contingency. And with that, I'll be glad to take any questions.
Do I hear a motion to approve, Mr. Bennett?
So moved.
Any second?
Second.
Great. Open up for discussion, please.
I'd like to recluse myself. This is a customer of mine, so I will not be voting.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, James, for the millions of people watching us right now on Facebook,
Millions. Apparently billions. Clicks if you're in the Gulliver. You know?
That's right, billions.
but there could be, in all candor, there could be a constituent who is looking at this and saying, can you help me understand how that could happen? You know, there is an explanation, and I think it's our responsibility, just in case someone's listening out there and watching, how do we get here in terms of this kind of charge for the change order?
Yes, sir. Last year, about this time last year is when we start putting together our budget for the year. And I'd look back at history then, but by the time, this time last year, we was already in that year's budget. It was based on historical volumes from previous years, and that's how the contract was originally established. We started seeing increases in siltation about this time last year. It's really when it started hitting very hard. And that siltation increase was due to a hurricane that come through about 9 months to a year earlier. And when the hurricanes come through the state, our headwaters of the St. Johns River is way up near Orlando. It takes a while for all of that to wash through the system, and we'll continue to see some sedimentation. The hurricane is what has contributed to this. Well, by the time I set the budget for this year, we were just starting to see a slight increase. Well, I bumped the budget up for this year by more than 50% from the previous year, trying to take that into account. Clearly, we never expected the volumes to go from an average of 150 to 160,000 up to 469,000. There was no way for us to predict that high. So we were already had the budget set, even with an increase for this year, and that's why we're off this current year. What I intend to do is for next year, I will continue to maintain a higher budget level such that we do not see another amendment. If we do see a decrease in the shoaling, then we are certainly covered. But the fact is it's really due to the siltation rates from the hurricane that come through going on close 2 years ago. But this type of activity is not, there's no way to know that just because a hurricane comes through or large storm events, because it wasn't just the hurricane, there's a lot of additional storms that come through as well, no named storms, but heavy rainfall that continues to flush out sediments through the tributaries on out into the main river for it to continue to carry that sediment, and it takes a while before it drops out. So we continue to look at other ways to try to address the berth maintenance dredging. We currently have a study that we're just executing now to look at seeing if there are ways to prevent the sedimentation at our berths. We'll have that conducted over the next couple months. And so we're looking at other alternatives to prevent this from continuing to be such a high cost for the port. But it's just very difficult to try to predict what Mother Nature is going to throw at you.
Sure, and Mr. Chairman, and thank you for that, because, you know, we're a big target, you know, JAXPORT, and people take shots at us all the time. I think it's helpful when the community understands how this could happen, and we're not just throwing money away. Thank you, sir.
No.
And just if I may add one last comment, and it's not just JAXPORT that's experienced it. Our private terminals along the river has experienced the same type of activities. So we all have felt the pain of the sedimentation issue along the terminal. So we continue to try to work with our partners to address it. But again, sometimes there's things with the hurricanes. It takes a delay before we ever see the impacts.
Thanks, James. Appreciate it.
You know, I will add for what it's worth, over my number of years at JAXPORT, I've seen there's really a couple of general ledger items that the staff has consistently over 7 years really try to look for that secret sauce,
Yeah.
and some of these things are so unpredictable.
Yeah.
I think we know, and we've come a long way in really 7 years in terms of setting our budgets around wages as well. Those are, you know, and so forth. So this is what I've seen over 7 years, this is an extraordinary outlier that,
Yeah.
you know, again, how do you predict that kind of surge, but good point to bring up and have a conversation. Anything else? Great, we call the question. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed? So moved. James, thank you very much. Beth McCaig, will you now present BD 2019-5-3?
Thank you, and
Beth.
good morning. Following up James Bennett's request to increase the contract for the Manson for berth maintenance dredging to set a new budget number, I remind the board that once you all approve our budget for the year, we present it to City Council, and then the City Council approves. If we are in a position that we see what we may be going over or increase the amount of expense that has been appropriated through the budget process, we have to go back to City Council to ask for their agreement. And that is not that we're asking for more money to cover an overage, but just because we're going over the appropriated expense amount. And in an abundance of caution, we're asking you, the board, to approve an appropriation amendment that we would request of City Council. Based on what James has presented, the budget amount for total berth maintenance expense is just over $4 million. We're asking for an increase to just over $8 million. If we see that we cannot cover the entire increase by reductions in other expenses, then we would present this to the City Council before July 31st to ask for their approval. We do, as you know, have a cost containment exercise going on to try to save as much money as possible, but an increase this large is too tough for us to overcome without cutting other important services. And so we expect that there may be an appropriation increase that we would have to ask for. So I present this budget submission to you and ask for your consideration and approval of a resolution to be taken to City Council. We put it in here a date of July 31st because, as James said, as we get more surveys in, we get another 30, 60 days under our belt to see how we're doing. He has a better handle on exactly what our expense number will be this year.
Thank you very much. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Great. Any questions? Discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So moved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Linda Williams, my friend, if you'd please come up and present BD 2019-5-4, and good morning.
Good morning. Through the chair, the members of the board. As background, the current union contract expires on September the 30th of this year. It covers about 59 of our employees, which is approximately 40% of our overall employee base. We have successfully negotiated a 3-year contract. The contract itself did not require much of the language change because it's a very matured agreement. However, we did need to address the base compensation. For the first year, the compensation, we're asking for a 3%, the second year a 2%, and the third year a 2%. We've also included in a one-time ratification bonus in order to get this wrapped up as quickly as possible, as well as save on the cost of the negotiation process and future reopeners of the contract itself. So we would actually like to ask the board members to ratify the agreement. The union membership themselves ratified the agreement on April the 17th, with over 90% of the members voting yes to the contract. So we'd like to ask you all to ratify the agreement and authorize the CEO to execute the agreement.
Very much. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Great. Any questions? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So carried. So
Thank
moved.
you so
Thank you
much.
very much. Now on to the CEO update. Eric.
Sure. I think we have a video we want to cue for you all to watch. That was the opening for our conference that we had last week. Can we cue the video? Thank you. That video opened up our 2019 conference that was held at TPC Sawgrass last week. We had a total of 350 customers there, all of tenants and port service providers with over 30 speakers. And those speakers were high-level management folks that came from around the country. I want to thank the staff for all the hard work and time that they put into it. Robert Peake, Jeff Price, Whitney Croxton, Chelsea Kavanaugh, and Amy Klinkenberg. And as you well can see, you know, our folks in marketing continue to put out a good product. That video was done in-house. We're very proud of them and the work that they do because they continue to impress us, but not only impress us, they raise the bar and save money because a lot of this we typically would outsource, and we have in the past, but they've stepped up and they've shown us that they can perform, and we thank them for that work that they do. Back in August of 2018, City Council passed an ordinance, and that ordinance requests all independent agencies and authorities to come to the council and give a update, and the update basically is of your financials and your business model. We will be giving our update on May 13th in our conference room here. We have 14 of the 19 council members have already confirmed, which I think is a very good number. We're trying to get 100%. I'm not sure we'll be able to do that, but we're working on it. And this is an opportunity for us to share our accomplishments over the last 12 months. So they'll get a chance to see and hear how we have performed over the last 12 months, and we invite any board members to please come and partake in that. That would be fantastic. I think it's at 9:00 a.m. on the 13th of May, a week from today, actually.
13?
Yes, sir, a week from today. Last month, we hosted JAXPORT Chairman Luncheon. Mr. Falconetti, our chairman of the board, he hosted that. We nearly had 100%. For those of you all that have been past chairman on the board and you currently sit on the board, we can only have one chairman at a time on the board. So as you all begin to sort of digress off the board, you will be invited, and we would love for you to participate in that luncheon. Mr. Chairman, I don't know if there's anything you want to add about the luncheon?
No, that's it. I think in years past, it was more when we kind of thought about it, we did it. It was a real pleasure of mine to sort of institutionalize that in my first term as chairman, and now coming back in a second time and being able to do it. We miss not having all the past chairmen there, but due to sunshine laws and issues as sitting board members, the current sitting chairman can only attend, but or we stage it like that. And a robust conversation, very active, enthusiastic sponsors and champions for us in the community, and we owe them all a debt of gratitude. I think the main point of conversation there was due to their great work in laying this foundation is where we can enjoy today's success.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, we continue to challenge ourselves. We continue to break records. I want the board to be mindful that we may not always reach that level, but we will try our darndest every time we step up to the plate. But one of the things that I have undertaken as the CEO of the organization is training. Training is big for us, and we realize that the competition is to the north, And we continue to fight that competition in the North. Almost feel like the Game of Thrones, you know, the White Walkers against So, you know, as Christian as Arya and Eric as Jon Snow continue to try and
We're
get
digging deep, man. The army of death, you know, wow.
we continue to work with our sales team. We continue to talk through what those presentations look like. We also realize, you know, we have to differentiate ourselves from everyone else. So we've gone out. We've actually employed the services of Mike Jackato. Mike has 30 years of experience in the sales industry. He is the owner and chairman of Butler Street Corporation, which is a sales and training agency. Not only will the sales team, but the executive team will be taking on a 2-day training this week on Wednesday and Thursday. I think it's important that we just don't push the sales team out and we train them. I think the senior leadership has to be trained too, because we're also sitting, talking to customers, potential customers, trying to close deals and sell. We all need to know how to do that and do it properly. And it's really not about, you know, whether or not you know how to sell. It's as I said, how do we differentiate ourselves? You know, how do we learn more about, you know, our potential customers, our customers? You know, what make JAXPORT important for them to change their business model from Savannah, South Carolina, to come to JAXPORT, right? And so those are the things that we'll be discussing and talking about over those 2 days. And I think the team is very excited, and we're looking forward to it. On another note, Mr. Chairman, James, you know, one of the things, and Dr. Newman, thanks for bringing this up, about the maintenance dredging. You know, that has been somewhat of a thorn in our side, but there, you know, the ports on the Gulf ports, such as Houston, they've had tremendous challenges. I've talked to my colleague there. As a matter of fact, their percentages are double of what it was the year before, double and triple. So it's something that the industry is dealing with as a whole. And as James said, you can't predict Mother Nature. However, we're trying to figure out how do we marginalize it and how we deal with it. You know, one of the things we've decided to do and actually conversation and through advice from our former chairman and board member, Mr. Ed Fleming, who's been in this industry for, I'm assuming, over 40 years, is to look at our current contract and through our procurement department, Jackie Glass, we put together a process that gave us an opportunity to sit down and discuss, you know, what may be the advantages out there. How do we go about looking at a new contract going forward? And so we had an industry day. And I want to publicly thank Mr. Fleming. He spent about 7 or 8 hours one day interviewing different companies within this industry, listening to, you know, what they had to add. And saying that, I think what we're planning on doing is actually RFPing this out in May. We'll sit down and we'll have negotiations with those companies that our procurement department will qualify going forward. And I think we may have some advantages there to sort of marginalize our cost over the years. But understand that it will be a challenge as we move forward, and it'll continue to be a challenge. I don't know, Mr. Fleming, if you want to add anything to that.
I just thought it was good that we had such a good turnout. I think we had six bidders or seven.
That's correct.
6, 7, 8 bidders, something like that. Highly interested. I think we picked their brains on how we can make them more efficient by possibly doing 3 or 4 events a year rather than every time one berth has a problem, they move and they come out and they fix that problem, and then they go back home and then have another problem come up, you know. So we had some pretty creative ideas, and we'll see when we open the bids.
That's right. That's right.
How creative they were.
Thank you, sir. Last but not least, I want to congratulate our own Miss Beth McCaig. Beth has been named one of Jacksonville Business Journal's ultimate CEOs. So I think there's a luncheon in June, is it? There'll be a luncheon in June. We'll have 2 tables there, and for you all that board members that can attend and support Beth, we welcome that. So I just want to give Beth a round of applause. I'm sorry. Mr. Shelton just corrected me. Ultimate CFO. You're right. That's it.
Yeah, we thought we finally got rid of you.
You got rid of me, right?
Welcome back.
Just for the record, I'm very happy with that title.
Okay. With that, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my my update.
Any questions for Eric? Wonderful. Eric, thank you very much. Next up are the reports. James will start us out with an engineering and construction update.
Thank you, sir. I've only got 3 projects to update you on this time, so my list of projects is getting shorter, which is a good thing. However, they are expensive projects as we move forward. The first project is our berth 5, 6, 7, and 8 underdeck repairs. I've talked before about our sheet pile walls. That project is completed. That was my last presentation on that last meeting, but this one is the underdeck that we continue to make progress on. This requires us to go up under the deck, chip out concrete, do update reinforcement as we need to, put forms in and pour new concrete to ensure we have nice underdecks that meets all the strength requirements that we need for long term. You can see here, this is just one of the locations at one of the faces, beams at the face of the berth where we've removed the concrete. You can see as the steel has been tied there as necessary. Form works are in place and it was getting ready to pour concrete. We did give our contractor about a 60-day break for when the winter was in. He was having a real struggle with the cold weather, the high tides and ships, because he has to work around the tides and they have to work around the ship schedule as well, because first and foremost we're going to make sure that we continue to operate. So we had a little bit of break. He's come back in March. He's making good progress once again, so we'll continue to see this project come to fruition. We'll have some more of this work that will continue through next year's budget as well. So we'll be doing this for a while. The next project, which is the major project, is our berth 33 and 34 reconstruction. As you recall, we finished up 35 and 34 about 2 years ago, and this was a complete reconstruction of those berths over at Blunt Island. This is now continuing another almost 1,400 feet of berth reconstruction. We went under contract in November. Our contractor is proceeding. It was a 26-month duration, so we're looking at sometime February of 21 before we finish this. The first phase is about almost 700 feet of work that is underway today. If you look at a couple of the photos, you can see he's got all his cranes and barges set up off the shoreline. He's got a very active work zone now. The good thing about it is I don't have to maintenance dredge right in front of him now, so that's a good thing. He's begun the removing of the deck itself, the old deck, which he's got to remove and take off site. He can't just drop it in the water and leave it. It's got to be taken off site. And you can also see in some of the locations where he's driving sheet pile wall. The contractor is Manson Construction. He's doing a great job so far, keeping a very clean site and ensuring that we do not impede any of our other operations, because as you can imagine, we've got an active terminal. This is right in the middle of the overall main wharf. So a lot of activities on both sides of him. Again, continue to make good progress along the way with the project. The third project that we have is the cruise terminal. We've had a number of smaller projects contained within the cruise terminal. However, the large component of that is a brand new gangway. This is a gangway for all the embarking and debarking passengers to use. For the last several years, we've been using a canopy covered breezeway where the passengers actually enter and exit the ship at berth level, which is the crew doors. And the ship was modified slightly to enhance that a little bit, but it's still coming through the crew doors. We've built a gangway now that brings them in on deck 7, which is 41 feet in the air above where they're walking in now. There's the gangway. It is in full place there. We have a couple more slight enhancements to make to it. A few more things that we're continuing to finish up, such as canopies and things like that, but the overall project is finished. We tested the brow twice before we put it into place, and this past Thursday we actually implemented the whole new gangway for debarking and embarking passengers coming to and from the vessel, as well as all new passenger flows in the debark area and baggage laydown area. The gangway itself is much larger than what we've had before. We put blue aluminum composite material panels on the side of it, which gives it a wind break, so when it is windy, the passengers doesn't hit the full blunt of the wind being that high in the air, and it also improves the safety of it as well. The gangway itself, as the walkways are very wide, we made them 8 foot wide to give passengers a much better feel coming up onto the gangway as they move forward. And as you can see, we've also unveiled some of our new logos as well for the branding. As passengers walk out the back of the embarkation, that's what they see as our new logo as they move forward to go up the ramps. This is a couple photos from on the ship itself. You can see passengers making the loop. We've coordinated with our partners there for the movement of passengers up and down the ramps to keep everybody moving freely there. And you can see the new brow. This is a picture from overhead as passengers walk on. The brow itself is about 5 foot wide, which is larger than what we've had in the past one. So again, very well done overall for implementation. We had a nice little ribbon cutting ceremony out there Thursday. You can see the captain of the ship there, along with Eric and our friends and partners at the Customs and Border Protection as well. It's very important that we make sure we keep a great relationship with them because they're critical in the overall flow, especially for the debarking passengers. So a great day there. Everybody's giving them a thumbs up from the brow, but it went very well. The other improvements that we've made in the cruise terminal is everything from the parking lot relocation, the gangway, interior walls, our VIP room, new mosaic walls, new carpeting, new passenger routing. That was the last big thing that we made modifications to. The entire debarking and luggage laydown area is drastically different today than what it was a year ago. It's much more improved than what we've ever seen. You can see our operations guys are doing a fantastic job with maintaining that floor, keeping it nice and clean, and you can see it shines as well. But the whole flow inside that terminal is drastically different, and it's been a great partnership with Carnival, all of their contractors, as well as Customs Border Protection to get it to where it is today. So everything is moving in place. Thursday was a great day. Glad to say it's done. It's behind us. We'll again make a few tweaks, but very close to being finished with improvements there at the cruise terminal. And with that, I'm glad to take any questions you might have.
Any questions for Mr. Bennett? Great. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
CFO Beth McCaig has provided us with financial highlights from March 2019 as information only in your board book. So let's continue now with Mike McClung, who will bring us up to date on the financials. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning. Okay, we have before us revenues for the first 6 months of the year through March 31st, halfway into the year. We're seeing some strong numbers regarding revenue, year-over-year growth being 7%. 7% year-over-year growth, 6% versus budget. Can you move to the next slide, please? Oh, no. Let's do this. Okay. Container revenue, pardon me. Container revenue, again, 7% growth in terms of dollars year over year, as well as cargo. So some strong numbers in FY19. We break out the Asia cargo up about, of the 41,000, about 19,000 of that TEU is attributable to our TEUs from the Asian cargo side. That's trade pack, which accounts for about 2/3 of the Asian cargo, and an SSA about 1/3 of that total cargo. So we're seeing strong numbers there. If you look at the year-to-year comparisons, that 41,306 TEU, a lot of that's attributable to Crowley, who's now fully engaged on their footprint here with the El Coqui and the Tiano. And those numbers continue to show strong performance, particularly in February and March. We think that's going to continue into the rest of the year. And you see that little gap there, about 10,808 TEU shortfall budget. We think we're going to actually catch up with the Crowley volumes, helping out significantly and close that gap, as well as the budget targets as well. So some strong numbers on the container side. Moving on to autos. Auto revenues, year-over-year 4% growth, 10% in terms of units. Some of that is land lease, and so we get a kind of a flat revenue stream from the lease, and then the volumes, the wharfage doesn't. That's why it lags a little bit, because some of their revenues are again land lease based. But we're seeing strong numbers there. If the 364,000 units that we see through the first 6 months continues, we'll see a track of north of 700,000 auto units, which would also be a record for the port. And we'll see that, we see the growth across Toyotas, a lot of our major carriers, and the POV units are also strong, shipments going to Africa and the like. Looking at the total income statement, we talked to containers and autos. We're also noting here that cruise revenues are very strong, exceeding budget and prior year about $350,000. We're seeing the cruise ships going out about 125, 130% occupancy. So just some strong numbers. If that continues for the rest of the year, we'll also see some record volumes in terms of passenger counts, north of 200,000. So the cruise business is also doing very well under the current model. So that's a revenue picture. Any questions on the revenues before I proceed?
Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry, what did you say on the cruise passengers, 125% of occupancy?
The benchmark, Mr. Shelton, the benchmark is 2 passengers per cabin would be 100% occupancy. So that's the benchmark. So we typically see more than 2 people per cabin. So when something like, take for example, spring break, we're seeing a lot of volumes now where they're what they call 125% capacity. So there are more than 2 people per cabin. So that's kind of the benchmark that's used to indicate.
Okay, so it's an industry percentage, it's not a math percentage. So their industry, they look at maybe 200% is what you're gauging. Okay.
Yeah,
All right. Okay.
So there's a safe range where they can carry more than 2 people per cabin. So
Their metrics,
we're
that's good. I'm
seeing
just curious.
ecstasy go out again with 2,800 passengers, sometimes more. And so that's a little confusing, but that's how those numbers are calculated.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions on the revenue side? Looking at expenses, as posed by James and Beth, we are watching our birth maintenance dredging dollars very closely, and we have a bust of $1.5 million through the first 6 months. We see that continuing through the rest of the year. And then we're in a cost containment mode as well to kind of offset some of that pain. And if you look at total operating expenses, we're currently just $386,000 over our budget target. So we're managing that to the best of our ability in terms of dollars. Looking at the full P&L, if we look at operating expense here, non-operating expense, you can see some debt service savings, and that's mainly because our line of credit, we've been able to keep that status quo without any additional borrowings or additional interest paid on that. As a result, really, the important number here is the bottom line versus budget. We see $2 million, even with the dredging, that's additive to our, what we call PAYGO. So that $2 million is still positive. Again, the revenues are outpacing our expenses at this point, which is going to help add to.
Would you like to step into the microphone?
Certainly. So the balance sheet real quick, cash and equivalents of $12.3 million. Our target is 16.3 or something in that neighborhood. That's where we were at the end of last year. That's the range we think we're going to get to by the end of April. If you'll see highlighted in gold, grants receivable, that's where we submit our grant request on a reimbursement basis to FDOT. Of that $5 million, about $4 million was collected in the month of April. And when we show you the balance sheet for next month, you're going to see cash in the neighborhood of 16 or 17 million. So we'll see cash rebound again, and consistent with the results we're seeing in the income statement. We're going to see those amounts accrued to the cash balances we have. Everybody follow that on the balance sheet. On the liability side, I mentioned the line of credit, still $11,794,000. Everything else on the balance sheet is pretty much like clockwork. All of our capital projects have no surprises there, no need for additional capital requests thus far. So that's a quick overview of the financial statements. Any questions? I know we covered a lot of information in a short period.
We're good, Michael, thank you very much. Kristen, can you please come up and present to us the commercial highlights?
Good morning. How's everybody today? Okay, so what I want to take you through is first we'll talk about the recent cargo highlights specifically. On the tail of what Mike was sharing, so for container volumes and revenue remain very solid, slightly exceeding budget projections to date. The Trans-Pacific volumes continue to grow really at a torrid pace at 28% year over year, but we do expect that volumes will cool a little bit for quarter 2, quarter 3. We had a small setback in terms of we were advised that the PEX 3 service, which is with the Alliance, that would be pulled from JAX going to Tampa. The impact of this, we expect that we will retain at least 30%. What's happening right now is all of the Trans-Pacific contract negotiations are taking place, really in finishing right now. So our team is working diligently with all of the BCO shippers and importers really to confirm what is being retained through Jacksonville through the other shippers. The reciprocal side of this, what happens very often is the trends within the container industry is just in the summer and fall months is when they decide the deployment for the following year. So even though with the PEX 3 impact, we have actually picked up additional capacity on with one of our other carriers basis. They actually dropped some calls on the West Coast, which are giving us the opportunity to pick up volumes here on the East Coast. So addition to that, to offset that revenue, there is a nice win that we have with the 832nd Battalion is volumes that will come through starting the summer, as well as other multiple accounts that we are working with, and new services that we are specifically engaged with multiple carriers on to target for next year. Okay. The carriers also, just as a note, carriers are really emphasizing profitability and revenue based on increased costs and also new fuel regulations that are going into place for 2020, which is putting them in a position that they're really tightening the purse strings overall. The Puerto Rico carrier volumes have flattened as expected with post-Hurricane Maria. Relief, however, as mentioned before as well, with Crowley here now really fully up and running, we're also seeing additional benefits from them as well for additional cargoes that they are routing through Jacksonville that traditionally would have been through parts north and south of us. For the Otto units, we've been very strong this year. We're up 10% over prior year. JAXPORT set a single month port record in March for Otto units. Used vehicles are up 29% last year behind strong markets in West Africa and Nigeria in particular. Any questions on the cargo? So overall, related to just the general commercial highlights that touch both sales and the marketing team, we were pleased to say that we welcomed the 2 largest container ships ever to JAXPORT back-to-back months. In March, we had 11,000 TEU vessel, the Cape Soino, called Blen Island, and then this month, or excuse me, April 25th, the Kota Pekarang, also called Blen Island. This is with the 2M service and operated by Zim Carrier. We also had the opportunity, thank you to Lisa Diaz, in presenting to Enterprise Florida board meeting about the FTZ and really highlighting Jacksonville and kind of how we've stepped up our game in terms of promoting that, and they're really encouraging the state as a whole to use it as an opportunity to draw additional commerce. We also held 2 major events, the Customer Appreciation that took place in March that Eric shared with you a special recognition really to the entire sales and marketing team for the time and energy they put together, also the sales and team in terms of what they did related to pulling the panelists together, which was really a critical part of the conference. Also to our Blen Island team for constructing our logo, which really became the centerpiece for the conference itself. And then also just really kind of touching on the fact that we have launched our rebranding campaign. This truly is just a hint of what's to come, right? We have the video, which was really set as a teaser. There is endless footage behind that of how that will expand into social media, into our website, and in terms of how we're creating that greater international presence and really showing the true essence of what JAXPORT has become with what our culture is and the boldness and vibrancy of where we're going as a gateway port moving forward. This is just a snapshot. I don't know if any of you have been surfing the web and decided to go to the JAXPORT website recently, but this is a snapshot of our new homepage. Again, a reflection of a brighter, bigger future as we believe. So would encourage all of you to take a look at it. It's easier navigation. It really speaks to all the different cargo segments. And we've also added the procurement tab for ease as well for attracting additional contenders who would like to work with JAXPORT. And then lastly, the video. Eric showed you that. We're very proud of that. It was done through the help of a gentleman named Ryan Ketterman, but also really an in-house opportunity that we took advantage of. There's more to come with that, and we thank you all for your support over the next year, really. You will slowly see how we are changing out the signage. Just behind you, as an example, is one. Everywhere we drive around, we see more signs and realizing that we have to change it out, but it's all part of a bigger plan that we have in terms of how we're phasing in the new signage. So thank you very much. Any questions?
Please,
Yes.
go ahead.
The Cape Scimio and the Coda Pecorine coming in 11,009 respectively. That's capacity, right? That's not what they're coming in with. What are
Correct.
they coming in with in terms of what the numbers are, because we don't have deep
The
water?
total, I can tell you for the last vessel, they go by move counts typically. What they utilize the measurement at SSA. So it was right at 750 move count. That's import and export combined. What the total capacity was at on the actual vessels, I'm sorry, I don't know offhand.
I'm just curious what our growth would be once we get that deep water in terms of what's right now coming in.
Yeah, well, we expect to have between 13,000, 14,000 size TEU vessels, but again, it's about what weight are they coming in and how much, and you know, that's where the opportunities for us exist. It's very easy to secure it's not easy to secure new services, but it's nice to say a new service is secured, but it's also about optimizing the services that we have and making sure that we put all those carriers in a position to succeed. So in theory, move count of 700 that happened on the last vessel could go to 1,400, 1,500. It's about maximizing what's moving through Jacksonville. Sure.
Question, Mr. Baker?
The news overnight regarding the tariffs brings to mind, what effect will that have on us, do you think?
Well, there's twofold. So we saw the benefits, obviously, at the end of last year with the surge on the volumes, with the expectation what would happen with Asia. There's still some nervousness out there. It's a cautious nervousness, but you see that our volumes have shown strong despite what the nervousness is about. The other thing we're watching closely, of course, is with Europe. And what could take place there related to the tariffs with the autos in particular. We're just in constant dialogue with our customers, with our OEMs, and with our processors. And right now, it's steady as she goes. It's just a lot of speculation right now.
Would you expect the volumes to drop off if those tariffs were implemented?
Yes, sir. It would be expected that there definitely would be an impact, anywhere from maybe 3 to 4%. Actually, next week, Frank Camp and I will be in Europe meeting with the ocean carriers and OEMs there collectively, and it will be one of the talking points that we have with them, trying to wrap our arms around that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Great, thank you. Anything else? Kristen, thank you. Thank you for your team. Great job. In other business today, up for discussion is the Hal Jones contract issue. Counsel for JAXPORT, Gil Fattel. I just can't say Gilbert. I'm Fattel. I got to go with Gil. All right, Gil. And counsel for Hal Jones will now present this contract matter. Gil, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Falconetti. Just briefly, I want to give some context both for the board members and for our audience as to what we're doing here. Hal Jones Contractors has been a longtime vendor to the port. James mentioned just a moment ago that he had just finished up that extended project of sheet pile work at 7 and 8. Hal Jones was the primary contractor on that. However, we have reached a dispute over a particular line item in the contract, and the process, what I'd like to do is just, to make sure I get it completely right, just read to you the portion of the contract that actually speaks to how disputes are resolved, because that plays directly in what we're doing today. This is General Conditions 3.7 disputes, and it says, except as otherwise provided in this contract, any dispute concerning a question of fact arising under this contract which is not disposed of by agreement with the project manager shall be decided by appeal to the Chief Executive Officer of JAXPORT. For purposes of time, I'm going to say that occurred, and certainly we'll address that during our respective presentations. But then it says that decision, he will render a decision, and that will be conclusive and final unless within 30 days after receipt by the contractor mails or otherwise delivers to the Chief Executive Officer a written appeal addressed to the Chairman of JAXPORT. In connection with the appeal proceeding under this clause, the contractor shall be given opportunity to be heard and to offer supportive evidence to its appeal. That's where we are today, that there is a dispute that has arisen as to the interpretation of a particular contract provision. Hal Jones, there was a staff level series of communications that's actually now raised to an appeal through the chairman, to the CEO, and then a letter to the chairman, and now it's for y'all to decide. Hal Jones is represented by attorney Chip Beshara. By agreement, we're going to have 15 minutes per side to address the issues that we'd like to address. And so Mr. Beshara will come up now, and then I will join you after. Thank you.
Thank you, Gil, for the introduction, and we agree on those points. Chairman Falconetti, members of the board, CEO Green, Councilman Gulliford, thank you for your time this morning. I have 15 minutes by agreement. I'd like to reserve 3 minutes to rebut any issues that may come up from Mr. Feltel, and I'll keep my own time. There may be somebody keeping time. Becky has that. So there's a lot of information for me to go through, and I'm going to have to do it very quickly. I've given you all notebooks. There is more information than the notebooks than you need, but let's move through this as quickly and hopefully painlessly as possible. This project involved the rehabilitation of berths 7 and 8 bulkheads. It's 1,780 feet of bulkhead at the Talleyrand Marine Terminal. The project was let for bid, and let's see, let me make sure I didn't go too far. Yeah, okay. So it was let for bid. It was designed by HDR along with JAXPORT. They prepared the contract documents. 7 bidders, 7 contractors bid on this project. Hal Jones, with a bid of $7.2 million, was low by $1.3 million, about 15% low. So immediately, Hal Jones' participation provided a JAXPORT savings of $1.3 million. This is the bid form. If you'll go to your notebook, and I apologize, we're going to be running through this quickly. If you go to the second tab that says bid forms, and you go to tab 1, you'll see essentially this is a revised bid form. This is provided by JAXPORT to the bidders, and it explains to them how they are to provide their bids, how they are to submit the amount of money that it will cost to perform this project. As you'll see on the first page, that addresses the base bid. At the very bottom of that box, you'll see a capital A. It's in bold print. It says base bid, lump sum work, excluding unit price work. And that's the amount